I know you mentioned also dreams and precognition as part of your research. And I would love to hear more. So I practice also Tibetan Buddhism, and they have an aspect of Tibetan Buddhism is dream yoga. And so I was wondering, are you familiar with dream yoga? How does dream yoga relate to what you do? How do you research it?
Yeah, absolutely. The dream yoga practices of Tibetan Buddhism. Um, I mean, it's the same practice and process in many ways, but the objectives might be different. In that, by my understanding, within like the Kagyu tradition, for instance, the idea of dream yoga is a practice for death, effectively, that you come to the point where you can maintain conscious awareness 24/7, even in these kind of extreme altered states we call sleeping,
Yeah.
and that you can keep your awareness then you can keep your awareness when you die,
Mhm.
and that you're better able to project yourself into a more desired reincarnation at the point of death when you go through the bardo. So, but the practices of lucid dreaming in dream yoga are the same as what we might do in ordinary non-Tibetan Buddhist like lucid dreaming. Um, except for the focus there in the Buddhist tradition is not to get lost in the experience, right?
Right.
Um, Whereas I'm taking a bit more of a kind of shamanic perspective in that we want to see if people can actively demonstrate um, some kind of successful transcendence of time and
Mm.
space by dreaming near future events, right? And bringing back that information in a way which can be verified experimentally. So we can say, hey, okay, great, this works. Because there's been a lot, I've been involved in research which has been going on for decades, looking at dreaming itself as a means of deeper connection, like people having particularly dream telepathy, but I've also done research on dream precognition. But there's as yet never been any research looking at lucid dreaming as a means of accessing precognitive states. So it's going to be the first study on that. And I'm actually hoping to be working with a good friend of mine, Charlie Morley, who's based or was for many years at this monastery in South London called Same Zong, which is
Mm.
a Tibetan Buddhist Kagyu dream yoga kind of institute, if you
How about
like.
that?
So yeah, there is some overlap for sure.
Yeah. Well, I'm fascinating to hear what unfolds and what you find.
Me too. Me too.
Yeah. Um, okay, so you have studied altered states, and I guess we could call it like psi phenomenon or para phenomenon. And have you encountered compelling evidence that mystical experiences grant access to non-ordinary forms of perception?
I mean, for me, compelling for me, maybe not necessarily for compelling for everyday mainstream jobbing science. Uh, it's hard to translate into hard science, but I think collectively, myself and my colleagues who've been working in this field for now 140 years, we've been collecting data, and that evidence, when you stack it up, is, I think, very compelling.
Mm.
What we tend to find is that these experiences, when you kind of test them experimentally, seem to be genuine. The effects are real. There's just the effects are very small, like relative to all the different controls we put in place, but they're genuine, and but they're mostly unconscious as well. So that people, we can take anybody, the general population, and file them through our labs, and we'll find, slightly above chance scoring on these kind of psychic tests. So that, collectively, it's like a numbers game. You get, okay, there's something going on here, which shouldn't happen, all things being equal, if there was no psychic abilities. But most people aren't kind of consciously aware of those experiences, and it's a bit hard because they are subtle.
Mm-hmm.
and they might be hard to detect and notice. And typically, the stories we hear of when people really do have an experience which they think, oh, that's, clairvoyant or telepathic or precognitive, they tend to be those kind of big moments, like usually like knowing when somebody's died. That
Mm-hmm.
seems to be like the most common variety. Like, and you could see how something as important as that may kind of break through this threshold where the experience is just kind of subtle and unconscious into a way in which it becomes very apparent and aware. So like at some point in most people's lives, they will have an experience whereby somebody close to them has either died
Mm-hmm.
or taken very ill, and they'll just have a kind of knowing. And it may be a dream where they see them in the dream, or they see an apparition, or they just have a certain sense that, oh my God, something's wrong with that person, or something bad has happened. And it turns out they are right.